Greetings, spider friends, and welcome to another episode of the Secret Origins of Mint Condition. I am your host, James, and joining me is Joe
Hey, neighborhood fans, how you doing?
and Chris.
Hey, true believers.
And if you've looked at what we're talking about today, then for the purposes of this show, all three of us are Spider-Man of any universe we want to be from. So we're talking about Across the Spider-Verse, which, as you know, we record these episodes and air them out of order. So we are recording this on the heels of the back of the store chat where Chris gave us his spoiler-free review of Across the Spider-Verse, and it got Joe and I, our minds reeling, and we went out and rented this movie and saw it, and we are going to talk about it now. I don't even know where to start because Chris, you gave us such a big introduction to it in our last back of the store chat. Why don't I just kick it off as from my artistic view, saying that Chris was 100% right. This is a artistic marvel. It's amazing that they were able to do hand drawn and CGI and watercolor and live action and put it all together, and some of those elements existing all together on screen in the same scene, and it works amazingly well, if not flawlessly well. I can't say enough about the graphic eye and creative mind to know what styles to use specifically. I personally got a kick out of the fact that Ben Reilly, Scarlet Spider, one of my favorite Spider-Men, was drawn the way that Mark Bagley drew him from the Clone Saga. Was fantastic. So I just can't wrap my mind around it. It blew my mind, Chris, like you said. It blew my mind. You were correct. Joe, I'm just rattling on here. So, Joe, what are your thoughts about the art that you saw in this movie?
Leaping to mind, it's a trippy, avant-garde film. The look of the film is amazingly fantastic. It's new and familiar at the same time. It's bright, it's dark, it's incredibly kinetic. Even though it's animated, it has this real-world cinematic feel to it. Does that make any sense? That's it.
Totally, I think it does. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and the composition of the shots, the camera angles, the close-ups, the POV shots, they're just wonderfully cinematic. I think it's the type of film that you could turn the sound off and watch it without the sound, and you would know what was going on and still be enthralled by it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that assessment. I think very, very cinematic, very intentional. They don't shy away but I was going to say they don't shy away from the hard work. We know that it's bonkers just how cinematic it is. And I think, if I had to find like a downside of it, it's that like, gosh, there's so much happening that it can be tough sometimes to find moments of visual silence, not even auditory silence, just visual silence,
Yeah, it's by the way, spoilers ahead. This is Chris. Chris was nice enough in the back of the store chat not to spoil it. We will be spoiling this. So at the time of this,
spoil everything.
Yes, if you have not seen this, then stop and go and rent it or buy it or whatever you prefer to do. Then come back because we're going to be launching into it. Yeah, I agree. I don't think the animators wasted any screen or any frame of this movie in terms of something they could put in there that either was an Easter egg for Spider-Man fans or was something that would add to the story or add to the realism of the scene. I mean, I think the quietest scene possible, but it was still doing so much work, was the scene where Gwen hugs her dad and the watercolors go from like deep blue into pink.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like it's quiet, but there's still a lot being done in just that scene alone. So
yeah,
it's the storytelling and the use of color in the storytelling, like you just said, Joe. Like they use color as a character and an element of storyteller. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
There are many themes that are brought up in this film, but I think the biggest theme is the theme of family and the quiet moments for me. And to me, my favorite moments in the film were the scenes with Miles and his mom and dad and Gwen and Captain Stacy, especially after the first 20 minutes of the film where she's, basically he's pointing a gun at his own daughter, right? And she's just asking him, could you stop being a cop and be my dad for a minute? And then she goes with Miguel and Jessica Drew. It's a heartbreaking scene for me because she has to leave her dad at that moment, not only because maybe her life is in danger, but because he just doesn't understand her. And it's just, and we children, teenagers, adolescents, we all go through this. We struggle with why our parents don't understand us, and and we see that later on on the rooftop at Jeff's birthday party, when finally Miles shows up with the ruined cakes, and it's these moments in the film with family are there. It just speaks to the realism of what they're trying to get across here. That everybody's lived through this, whether you're a superhero or not. We've all
Yeah.
lived through these moments.
Sure. No, and I'm glad you mentioned the whole, when Gwen at the beginning of the movie says, "Dad, can you just stop being a cop for a minute and be my dad instead?" And that's exactly what he does at the end of the movie, right?
Yes.
Like, she asks him to stop being a cop and just be her dad, and she just meant in that moment, right? But like, he makes the permanent decision.
Yeah.
That this is what if he has to choose between being a cop and being her dad, he picks her dad.
Yeah, he makes the right
That's
choice.
yeah.
Not only for her, but for him.
Yeah.
Just as important for him as it was for her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I agree. There's so much about family. I love that we get to see more of Rio. I like that the most interaction we see between Miles and Jeff, his dad, is as Spider-Man. Like, I like that we get to see a little bit of like how their relationship has progressed in the like a year and several months since the last movie. That, like, at some point Jeff's like, "This is why they don't like us, man. This is why nobody likes us."
Yeah.
Them talking, they're developing this sort of relationship, and it makes me. It's obviously not the same, but I like that there's this sort of this now uneasy alliance between them. It's almost like reflective of a Batman Jim Gordon kind of situation that we're starting to see. There's like, he's talking about his kid, and Miles is asking about his kid, and of course he's like personally invested in this, but Jeff actually does trust him with some of it, and they have these moments together, right? Which, by the way, can I just say, one of my favorite parts of the movie is when Jeff is going to jump into the hole and he goes down the stairs just like Miles did in the first movie.
Yep. I gotta rewatch the first film again now.
Yeah, the interaction between Miles' mom and dad is like, it's humorous, but it really shows what a tight knit family they are. It's really like, it's the writing is just the back and forth in the dialogue, especially in that first scene with the guidance counselor, and and it's the first time Miles also like kind of puts what he wants to do out there, and and as much as his parents support him like being smart and moving forward, they're also afraid of him leaving like their safe little neighborhood and going out.
Yeah, I love that. New Jersey is too far from New York.
Yeah, right. And in that scene where they're discussing the counselor and the two parents and Miles, he says, "I want what school do you want to go to again? Is it MIT?"
No, it's Princeton.
Princeton, okay, Princeton, because it's New Jersey, right? MIT's. But he says something that's like, to me, it was so refreshing to hear, because he's not the young character know-it-all. He says, there are people at that school who can teach me things I need to know. And that just stuck with me. And I love that. I love that about his character. I'm so happy that the writers put that in, because, James and I, and, James, we've spoken about this, and Chris, but sometimes with these newer characters, they come fully grown, they on the page, so to speak. And we're told, okay, they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But we see the maturation of Miles from the first movie into this film. And we see him sitting there in that awkward moment with his parents and his counselor. And yeah, he's becoming his own man. He wants to stand up and do what he wants to do with his life. And he admits, I don't have all the answers, because there are people who can teach me what I need to know. And I thought that was a beautiful moment and a great thing coming from it.
Yeah. No, I do. I this is why I came down on, because I was talking to Christina about this yesterday. I think it was last night I was talking to her about this. That I really firmly believe this is the best superhero movie that's been made. And she's like, that's a really heavy endorsement. And I was like, yeah, but like, when I think about other movies, I can usually find a weakness, whether it's, the score or some of the dialogue or like a little plot device or whatever it might be. And it's funny too, because in conjunction with that, I was talking to a very good friend of mine, Andrea, and I was saying that, like, she was talking to me about the Marvels trailer. And as excited as I still am for the Marvels, I hate that apparently the centerpiece of the trailer, not the teaser, which was amazing. The trailer is this like this villain saying, you know, you took everything from me, and I'm like, I'm really tired of
Yeah.
that particular line coming from a villain. We do get that in this movie, but it's not the centerpiece, right? Like
Exactly.
it's not. It doesn't take center stage. The movie stands on its own. So like even all the dialogue and the story of this movie all really works together, and like there's the family, but that's not the only thing happening. I love the amount of redirection. Like it's so, by the time we get to the end of the movie, it's easy to sort of forget like that you know, Miles does have a sort of arch nemesis here because he's so busy dealing with other stuff. It's easy to forget, like, oh yeah, no, this a lot, all of this comes from the spot,
Mm.
right? So I think all around, like we talked about the visuals, and of course those are the most stunning, but like all the moments we're talking about, all the scripted stuff, like they don't even. You're right, the animators did not miss an opportunity to take an opportunity, right? Like I mean, all the way down to you know, all the different spider people, the fact that there was like a spider T-Rex, and when it uses its web shooter, it doesn't say thwip, it says T-whip.
T-Whip. Yeah,
Yeah.
I missed
Like
that.
yeah, and that's just it. Like there's so much in there, and somehow they still manage to keep it coherent, right? Like it all still comes together. We still get to know more about these spider people. I didn't feel like anybody was, you know, when I saw Wakanda Forever, I was most excited about Ironheart, and I didn't love what they did with her because she was so ancillary. And in this movie, I don't get that feeling from like anybody. I think everybody gets the amount of screen time that they need to get without necessarily upsetting. Like this is still Miles' story,
Mhm.
but we get to see so much of Gwen, and we get to learn more about I can't pronounce his full name, but Pav, the Indian Spider-Man.
Pop,
Mm-hmm.
I know Miss
You
Pop.
know,
Yes.
Spider Punk is great. We get to know enough about him. Like everybody, Miguel, like Spider Woman, we get so much from everybody without it
Yeah.
feeling like anybody is taking over the story. This is all still centered around Miles. It's really, to me, it's just fabulous the way that this is all orchestrated. That's how I see it. I see this entire movie, this entire story as an orchestration, and I think a perfectly brilliant one at that.
I was
What
actually like, oh, sorry, Jar. Didn't mean to
say?
cut you.
We're 20 minutes into the film before we even see Miles, right? Because
Yeah,
We're
well,
getting
Gwen
Gwen's
for a
story.
while,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
which is kind of fun because I like we because we do see Miles, right? But we see him through Gwen's eyes.
Yeah,
Like we
exactly.
see him, like you see his reflection in the subway when she's thinking about him and missing him.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, arguably, I was just watching a few YouTube videos after I saw this. It could be said that like this might be Gwen's movie, and it's just actually her recapping the whole thing to lead up to the final scene where she put a team together to go rescue Miles.
Hmm.
So it's possible we're watching a whole movie that's really from Gwen's point of view, and that Miles is the crux or the impetus for what's happening in the movie. So I thought it was like an interesting interpretation of like how
Sure,
we're
yeah, no, I can see that.
I mean, you can make that case. Sure, sure you can.
and I
Definitely.
also found it like interesting. This is a movie about it's Spider-Man, it's across the Spider-Verse, and while we have B Parker, there isn't a main character, a main Spider-Man who is traditional Spider-Man, which I thought was refreshing. They really leaned into all the different Spider-Man to the point where normal Spider-Man is not even a main character. He's just
Right.
like he's the backdrop for all of this that happened.
Yeah.
But I was like, wow, that's very impressive. Like I don't think we see like a traditional Spider-Man like on screen longer than a few seconds.
Yeah, and the ones that we do see, I enjoy that. Like you know, old cartoon Spider-Man, I can do anything he
Yeah.
can. Oh, I pulled
Yeah.
something, right? And I love that we get to see Scarlet Spider in there. You know, calling on. They're trying to. Hey Ben, I need you for something. Not now. And we're calling a particularly painful memory.
Yeah.
Oh, like I don't know. It was all really well done.
I know, especially. I mean, I've read the Clone Saga, and I'm one of the few people who likes the Clone Saga.
You are.
I mean, I actually never finished it, but to be fair, they never finished it either. So,
Well, because they were about to go bankrupt at Marvel at that time,
yeah,
partly because of that storyline.
yeah. To be fair, they never came up with an ending and didn't know where they were going. So where it ended is kind of where that was the last issue, and then they went bankrupt almost. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I was it was. Yeah, Chris, I just wanted to there's so many points to make, so I'm just trying to get my thoughts back into place.
Yeah.
But to everything you said before, Joe, you said before, like the spot, I forgot about the spot at the end because the spot, and again, spoilers, the spot seemed like just a device to get to what the real problem was. And the real problem was that Miles wants to break canon, which I thought was a fantastic plot point because I was
Yeah.
texting with our friend Josh Murray, who has not seen this, no, who saw this movie, and we were just messaging back and forth about how everything about comic books and pop culture is it in canon or is it not in canon? And this
Right.
movie, like that's the real plot point is canon. Like, can you
Mm-hmm.
break canon? And Chris, to your point, Miles wants to break canon in the way for Spider-Man. Like, does he need tragedy to happen to him for him to be Spider-Man?
Well, and also at what kind of tragedy do you need, right? Because what he's now learned is that somebody has died because of him.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Parker died because, that's what Miguel reveals to him, right?
Right.
Is that like that your Spider-Man never would have died, the spot never would have been created. Like none of this would have happened if you hadn't been bitten by the spider. So like, is that not tragic enough? Does it have to be his dad? Does it have to be Gwen? Right? Like the same with some of the other and we sort of get to see some of that, right? Like Pav seems like a great Spider-Man, but also he hasn't had that tragic defining act yet. So like what kind of spider person does he become without it? Because like even it's also one of my favorite moments is when after the spot disappears into the collider, Pav goes, "Well, another easy adventure for Spider-Man." They're like, "No, no, 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 no,
Yeah,
no."
it's right over his head.
Right. Like he's only been Spider-Man for 6 months. Like he doesn't know. But you're right, James. Like, does he need tragedy to be Spider-Man? And if so, what kind of tragedy does he have to experience?
Correct. Yeah. Like, how big a failure? I mean, because I think a hero needs challenges and failures to properly shape them into a wiser hero. I mean, even Batman. We saw Batman Year One. He had his like falling off a rooftop, or like almost getting knocked over with the TV that he was trying to prevent the guy from seeing. Like, Batman's had his mishaps, but that Batman's. I mean, obviously, Batman had the huge tragedy of losing his parents, but like, does a Spider-Man need a death of someone close to them to become Spider-Man, or do they just need to learn lessons from their failures and grow from that? It's a
Well, and that's
very interesting question.
it. That is, that's I think that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that we see also just in general as humans, because to be human, if you're human, pain is inevitable, but all of that loss, Stephen Colbert talks about this. He talked about it after I think it was just losing his dad so early, and he's like, I'm either a Catholic or a Buddhist. He's like, I firmly believe that that pain and loss are gifts. Everything you get when you're alive is a gift because being alive is a gift, and so you don't have to want the thing to happen, but you. He's like, but I think you need to be grateful for it, and I don't necessarily entirely agree with the whole gratitude thing, but I do agree with what he says about how that kind of loss is what makes us more human, that connects us with our fellow humans, that connects us with the greater humanity. It makes it more likely that I'm going to be able to listen to what you're sharing with me,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to say that sucks, or joining you in that dark place instead of trying to make things better, instead of trying to find the silver lining. Like it's we see that in the movie what thing is it What Things May Come.
What dreams
What
may come.
dreams, thank you. What Right, because the quote, yeah. What dreams may come, when Robin Williams, finally gives up trying to save his wife from hell and joins her there. And later on she says, sometimes when you lose, you win. Right? And then because he earlier had said sometimes when you win, you lose. And I think that you're right. I think it's not just for superheroes. I think for people too, like that those experiences of pain and loss arguably bring us closer to the rest of humanity, depending on how we respond to it. But there is something really, as Miles says, messed up about facilitating that happening with the plan that like you need this to become Spider-Man. This is what you signed up for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have it when the universe that's the way the universe plays out. It's another thing that they're dealing with where you're aware of it and letting it happen, or even orchestrating it as a plot point in canon of a Spider-Man's life.
Yeah, well, Chris just said about how loss can connect us with the rest of humanity. I mean, if we just go back to OG Spider-Man, Peter Parker, his greatest loss is after Uncle Ben is Gwen, right? And what happens after that? He finds Mary Jane. Well, they find each other actually. So he then finds the love of his life. So whether it be in comic books or reality, loss and pain are just part of being human, and it's not the whole silver, like you said, because it's not the silver lining and finding the silver lining in the cloud, but it's finding a path that you may not know that you were even destined to take, and it leads you someplace else. That's what what's happening in this film, and as you just said, James, orchestrating the tragedy. I mean, this is what Miles is pushing back against. And that, to me, is very refreshing to see that in a CBM, in a superhero film. Not saying okay, I'm going to. I mean, all the other Spider people accepted their tragedy, right? But Miles won't do that because he needs that connection to his parents and to the real world. So it's very
Well, and
very.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Joe. And incidentally, even though that wasn't what he was trying to do, Miles, as Gwen learns, Miles proves that you can actually change canon events.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And he also, like, that's a big moment for Miles, because like being there with all the different spider people was his like dream and his want from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the movie. And when he realizes what they're doing, he's the one out of, let's say, what, 1,000 spider people there. He's the only one who's like
Conservatively, yeah.
Yeah.
willing to like say this is wrong. Like, and it seems like he's the only person willing to speak of like, you don't think that this is a
Yeah.
good idea to willingly let people in your life die because of
Hell,
a
they
canon
incarcerated him,
event.
right? Yeah, they
Yeah,
incarcerated him at one point.
yeah. Like they all agreed or were unwilling to speak up about the fact, like, yeah, I guess we're going to watch each other's loved ones die just because, like, a relative becomes a captain, or my uncle has to die, or my first girlfriend has to die. Like, they're all willing to stand back, and Miles is the only one pushing back and giving up sort of his place in the place he wanted to be since the beginning of the movie.
Mm.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the reasons I find it so interesting that like some of the team comes around to like save Miles, but but it's Hobie who knows this is messed up, and he warns Miles, be careful what you're joining, right?
Mm.
Which leads us to ask sort of like what was Hobie doing here? Like I want to know why Hobie is there.
Mm.
So I really yeah, no, I agree with all that.
Yeah, I mean, Hobie's is an interesting character. I mean, I'm curious like why he was there also if he didn't agree with it. I mean, it seemed like I guess he was he's putting up the front that he's just an anarchist and
Oh, totally.
doesn't care. But I don't know if that's his real fully motivation for being there.
Well, and
Or
I think there's an element too of not just that like that he doesn't care trying to put up a front kind of thing. I think some of it is that like because I also maybe he's trying to take them down from the inside. You know,
Mm.
um, I think that's definitely a possibility. I think there's something to be said for like maybe he joined them when he was younger. He is an anarchist, but like they took advantage of an opportunity to go. This guy's in pain. We could use his help. Let's bring him on board. I don't know. I don't know. There are a lot of different ways I feel like that could go.
yeah,
Yeah, that story hasn't been fully told yet. I don't think.
no.
Yes.
And also, if you look at Miguel's reason for why you can't undo canon events, you know, he took it to the extreme though. I mean, he took it to the extreme of assuming another Miguel's life instead of
Yeah.
like he couldn't just allow a reality where his family was alive and not be a part of it. He chose to be a part of it, which is going like way above like, instead of just preventing an event, he inserted himself into an event. So
Mm.
like his whole reasoning for why you can't break canon events is sort of flawed to begin with because he took it to the extreme, and that's why extreme things happened.
Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah.
he's a character that you see in films who loses touch with reality at some point because the mission consumes him so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And but like you said, James, he literally he orchestrated these events, and it's kind of interesting to see watch his pain unfold, and yet a lot of it was brought on himself. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate like I guess the only villain. I mean, Miguel is cast as the villain, but he's
Yeah.
also a damaged Spider-Man.
Yes.
Spot is, I guess, Spot and Well, we don't even know. I mean, I guess we'll see in the next movie. But the Prowler we meet at the end, like again, spoilers,
Oh,
people,
Yeah.
spoilers.
that blew my mind.
Is that Miles Prowler evil, or is that Miles Prowler like an anti-hero? I don't know. What do you
No,
guys
no,
think?
I think he's a bad guy. I do. I think he's a bad guy. I think there's going to be a lot that needs to be. This is why, like, I know that they at the end of the movie it says, it'll return next year, and it's like, there's no way. This is gonna be another 5 years. But I don't mind waiting because there's so much that they've done masterfully so far. I don't want them to stumble here. Um, no, I think Miles is a bad guy. I think his dad died. I think that was the Prowler's canon event because I think canon events work both ways.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
So I do. I think he's a bad guy. I think, Spot is complicated. I don't think Miguel is a bad guy. I think Miguel is just a by the numbers guy. It's something that I run into a lot with, this is not the only field in which it happens, but I run into this a lot with like social work, which is, and I talk to Christina a lot about it because she runs into it as a physician, which is that you have people reading data who make decisions like on a large scale, like legislative and funding scales, and all they're doing is reading the numbers.
Mm,
They don't see the bigger picture. They don't understand the context. And when you read numbers without context, you get problems, right? It's so I think we see that on a pretty regular basis of you're reading numbers without a really good example is everybody talking about how towards the end of the pandemic, like, wow, Netflix is in a lot of trouble. Look at their numbers dropping. It's like context. Your argument that they're doomed because they're not getting new subscribers, there are only so many people in the world. At some point,
that,
you saturate the market and there are no more people to bring in. And you're losing people because of outside factors like, the end of the pandemic. At this point, people are getting back to their lives, they're doing other stuff, and a lot of people got rid of Netflix. So, like, if you look strictly at the numbers, it looks like Netflix is going to bomb and nobody knows why. Context matters, and I think that's what we see with Miguel is that Miguel is not a villain, but there are two things about him. One, he's only looking at the numbers. He's like, who you're going to save one life versus an entire universe? Which, like, yeah, there's something to be said for that, but also context is a thing. And the other thing too is I think he embodies this really, really well. That thin blue line mentality of we are the only thing standing between order and chaos. And when people believe they are the only ones standing between order and chaos, that it all comes down to them, inevitably authoritarian measures are going to be taken. And that's what we see with Miguel. Miguel says, I'm the only one who's holding it all together, which is
mm,
kind of rich coming from a guy who's leading a team of like 1,000 spider people, right? He's not doing this alone. He's not the only one holding all this together. But as long as I'm willing to believe that I'm the only one holding it together, why would I trust anyone's judgment but my own? And that makes me someone in a position of power very dangerous.
Yeah, I agree. Which is, but again, it goes back to my point. Like, I guess for good or for ill, he's got the buy-in of all these Spider-Men, like, or all these Spider people that bought into his way of
vision, yeah.
thinking.
Mhm.
I think
Um,
because I think his logic is so appealing, right? It's the difference between saving one life and saving an entire universe. Like, who stops to do that kind of math? Plus, I don't know the circumstances of when he got to the other spider people, but like he didn't get to Miles until before the loss. So maybe Miles agrees after the loss, like because Peter B. Parker says we wouldn't without Uncle Ben, most of us wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And the good that we did wouldn't have happened. So, like, it's easy to convince somebody after the thing happened that this defines you. But it's interesting because it's not necessarily the thing that defines you. It's just something we latch onto, right? Like, I liked JMS's run on Amazing Spider-Man because he introduces the possibility that, like, what if that spider was going to bite you anyway,
Mm,
right? Maybe it wasn't just pure accident. It wasn't just radiation. Like, you've tapped into something that's mystical, not scientific. Um, and it kind of blows Peter's mind, right? And some of that is like some hyperbolic writing. I know it's a little much. I really like it, but I know it's a little much. But it's this idea that like I always thought A, and it turns out it was B all along, and that blows your mind. So I think Miguel's logic is very appealing to people who've already suffered the loss. And so anticipate that in order to become Spider-Man, other people also have to suffer the loss. Like we even see that in today's society, right? Like, I would like to see student loan forgiveness. And then other people say, well, I had to pay off my student loans. You should have to pay off yours. Well, why? Why do you take that attitude? Just because people used to die of preventable diseases, why should people now have to die of those same preventable diseases?
Well, I
Right?
think it's like
Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I think what you kind of landed on in addition to that though was like when Miguel says it's one person against the world, for good or for ill, that plays right into a Spider-Man's persona, doesn't it though? Like
Yeah.
I am willing to sacrifice myself to and be unhappy, as much as we debate this point to make other people happy. So he probably got that buy-in from that because if all Spider-Men have like a similar personality trait, that's probably it. Like I'm willing to put my happiness on hold for other people to be happy. So if it's one person in a spider, in a spider person's life, then against like all the millions of people on any world, then I guess I'm willing to do it. So, to your point, Chris, that's probably the buy-in he got from the other spider people.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, it's interesting. And there's also this element of like, Miles still believes that Spider-Man can do both. He says it, right? Spider-Man always, Peter B. Parker says not always. But Pav says something earlier when he's trying to save his girlfriend and his girlfriend's father, when he says he's trying to hold up the bus and he says, I can do both, right? So there's an element of hope there also that Miguel is kind of exterminating.
Oh yeah.
This idea that I can do both, right?
Yeah. I mean, Miguel has not, at least in this in part one. Again, spoilers, audience. Chris said before, this is a two-parter in case you're not aware. But in part, like Miguel does not give you any hope. Like I don't feel hopeful with Miguel
No,
in charge or anything that he's
he's there to
doing.
maintain the status quo.
Right, right. But he's not giving like hope or hopeful. There's Miguel doesn't have any of the joyful aspects that you associate with Spider Person of any.
Yeah, right, isn't
None
it? I think
whatsoever.
Peter Parker says you're the only Spider-Man without a sense of humor, which is very funny because I know he doesn't mean to be, but he's very funny in that first scene with Gwen.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Miguel pops his claws, Miles goes, "Are you even Spider? Are you even a Spider-Man?"
Yeah,
Yeah,
are you
right?
dude? Are you sure you're
You're
Spider-Man?
Spider-Man. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Joe, you could speak to this because I don't even remember the comic book. Like Spider-Man 2099, I don't even remember if this is like Miguel's personality or not. Or
I never read that book, James. Miguel O'Hara first appears in Amazing Spider-Man 365, and then his first full appearance is in Spider-Man 2099. But I guess I was in my early stages of denying multiverses back then. I didn't want to get involved in another multiverse. But this film, I mean, going off track here, and I don't even know, what the hell. This film blows Doctor Strange and whatever the hell the rest of the title of that movie was out of the water as a multiverse film. This is what they should have done this with that film.
I like that it even takes a dig at this film.
It
Even takes a
does.
dig at that when it's like Doctor Strange and that little nerd back on Earth, 1999.
Right. That's right.
Doctor
You're right,
Strange.
Chris. Yeah,
Maybe you shouldn't be practicing medicine.
exactly. Oh, there are so many jokes that are just almost under somebody's breath, so to speak. And just like throwaways. It begs a rewatching of this film, or multiple rewatchings of this film.
Oh, for sure. I've tried to listen to when they first walk in and they make a joke about finding the spot. And Miguel says, "Does anybody else have a joke about that?" And every spider person has a joke. Some of it is put into text. Like
That's right. Yeah.
And for sure, absolutely one of my favorite jokes comes from the Spider Woman in the wheelchair who says, "I'm a big fan. Do you think spider people use comedy as crutch? Get it, crutch?" And she just kicks him the whole thing kills me. I do. I think all the humor is really good. The interplay between the different spider people is very funny. I think this is comedy that's on par with Deadpool, and I think that's also why in the comics Deadpool and Spider-Man get along as well as they do and play off of each other. Is we get to see the different spider people. But somebody pointed out something else that I really like about this movie, which is like this is one of the few superhero movies where like an entire scene is dedicated to saving as many people as possible.
Yes,
Mm.
yes,
We don't
yes.
normally get to see that. We normally see them save like one or two people. Like one of the scenes I can think of is Iron Man saving those people out of the plane in Iron Man 3, right? They dedicate an entire scene to him saving like 10 different or 11 different people who fall out of that plane. But
Yeah,
usually it's some grander battle, and we still get lots of action. But like when they're in Mumbattan, and you can see all four spider people like working together, using their webs to like fling each other, um, to save other people. Like I just it's super cool to see them work in concert that way.
yeah. James, I think you saw it. There's a scene like that early on in the Flash, right, where he has to save the entire maternity wing of the hospital as it's coming down. So
Yes, yes,
it's
yes.
one of the few scenes in the film I actually liked.
Yes, it
But
was actually one of the out of the whole Snyder universe. It was one of the best Justice League scenes we ever got
that's
with
right.
Okay,
all of them
Yeah,
working together.
yeah,
that's saying something.
yeah. That's saying something. Yes, very true. There's a scene at the very beginning when we get the introduction that this is, after that 20-minute opening with Gwen, we see Spider-Man, the hero of Brooklyn, right? And we see, and this is a little Easter egg for me, I thought, because we actually see the Myrtle Avenue stop on the BMTJ line. And for 9 years, I passed that stop every day on my way into work to Manhattan every day. So I thought that was very cool. They got that, and I stopped it and went back to make sure that the trains listed underneath the sign Myrtle Avenue were the trains that should be there, and the J was there. So I said, all right, they got it right. Okay, they didn't put like the A or the number 4 or something like that. They put the J train. They knew it. So attention to detail like that, I just incredible. Loved it.
Well, there's apparently like that shucking oysters stand that he passes in one scene is a real stand in New York City. That
Probably is, yeah.
yeah, like there's like a lot of like deeper cuts aside from like just Spider-Man cuts and Marvel Comics cuts. There's like real world cuts in there too that you
Oh yeah,
could
definitely. Yeah.
freeze frame, and it's a reference to different people associated with the movie, different names of people who worked on the movie, different like there's so much that they again, and not a wasted scene of animation.
Mm.
Everything is doing something or referencing something. It's I'm surprised they don't have a cut where they just like put on like a dozen like tags in each scene where you can like freeze frame like, oh, this is all this, like this
Mm.
means all that. So I mean, I guess that's what YouTube's for, but
Yeah,
uh,
all these little things, because Brooklyn is the setting in the film, right? It is a character in the film. He's the Spider-Man of Brooklyn, and all these little touches just texture the movie even more, and make it more believable and more realistic, and just draws you into it even further.
this is kind of a tangent thing, but since like we see all of the, as Chris's point, all these spider people working together in tandem and handling these crises. Do you think like a group of spider people could be just as good as the Avengers?
Oh yeah, sure, why not? Especially because not they, we see that they don't all have the same power set, right? Miles obviously his powers are growing, and he's becoming even more powerful. So yeah, if you put that many spider people together, they could do more than just stick to a wall and shoot webs, I would imagine. And Spider-Men and women are fairly powerful, in their own right. So yeah, I wouldn't mind
Yeah.
seeing a spider cadre going up against the mighty Avengers and see how that finishes.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
the last man or woman standing?
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I don't. I do. I like seeing the different powers. I like seeing the different abilities. And I like that in this movie, the way that like the style in which they're animated actually does matter. So, for example, like we find out early that there's something called hammer space. Do you
Right.
guys?
Yes. Yes.
Mm,
Yeah, like it's super cool, right? This is how Spider Ham keeps the mallet in his pocket. Is that he's got hammer space because of the way he's animated. We see it with that vulture when
hmm
he like redraws his arm or his wing after it's been chopped off by Miguel, who then goes, he has an exclamation and a little explanation of what hammer space is. So we know that that's like part of his power, right? We see the way that Spider Punk is like a collage and the way
Yeah.
he's animated, that gives him possibly some different abilities just because the way he's animated influences the way he can behave.
hmm
And we see that also with Penny. And we saw it in the first movie the way she moves, because of her like anime style action, she can move faster than like time sort of allows in some situations, like jumping into a robot, because that's the animation style. So I think that's another sort of neat thing, was figuring out, how do these different animated spider people, like what rules are they following when they interact with one another?
Exactly.
Yes, that's a very good point, Chris. I didn't even fully catch that, but yeah, each style of wherever they come from has its own power set and its own moving style and talking style. Yeah, it's yeah. Again, it just goes to the level of like how like the metaphysical and physical levels that the animators and people are thinking on this movie is it's mind blowing to think about, like all the different levels you're thinking about in a single scene. And I also like, like I said, the live action stuff. I like seeing Donald Glover as the Prowler. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He's like, it's rude to stare.
Rude to stare. Later on, when they're like boo, and you can see him in his little cell again, boo. I also like the little descriptions, like, oh, what was it? A really interesting Craven, a really boring Rhino.
Really, it's a rhino.
Yeah.
It was good.
Well, and I also liked again the subtle details. The when he's explaining the multiverse or showing the multiverse, it's the same diagram as in Loki that they showed before about how the multiverse unfolds and changes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, I didn't realize that.
yeah, it's the same thread that when at the end of Loki season 2, no, season 1, sorry, at the end of season 1 when they broke the multiverse, the way it spirals out is the same way that they were showing Miles.
Oh, that's right. Yep, it surely is. Yeah, now that you mention it, yep.
Yeah, and I'm assuming by Miguel's throwaway comment that he had to deal with Doctor Strange's little mishap in No Way Home.
Probably did.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, no, I do. I like that. I like how abrasive he is, right? Like when Vulture says something, like, "What are you guys talking about? Shut up, Calente," like Cayente. I like that, especially because it plays in such stark contrast to everybody else. Like, it's cool when he shows up. He's so badass when he shows up, right? Like, even the way that he like streaks in, and you see Gwen's face, and it's almost like lit up by his cape, right? That sort of like neon red / orange. And he does look badass, but I like that in this movie there's no one badass. Like,
No.
they all have different things they do that make them look badass, because like he has that moment, but then when like Spider-Woman Jess Drew comes through and like hits Vulture with her like motorcycle and drills the wheel, and then like just pops some donuts, and then it turns out she's pregnant, and the line the actor is I think her name is Issa Rae.
Yes,
And
yep.
she's like, "We don't know the sex yet. My husband wants it to be a surprise. He's corny that way, but so hot." Like, it's just the humor again is good. It's a different style of humor. Like when she says, why not her? Is it because she called you Dark Garfield? Um, like the style in which she functions is badass, right? And we see it from Gwen too, when she kicks around the Vulture, and then when she almost single-handedly stops that helicopter. It's so cool that they're all so strong and cool, but in their own way. So there's no like, I don't feel like there's any sort of hierarchy.
No, yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Jessica Drew, because I was going to bring her up too. I also like Gwen's reaction when she sees her do all that stuff with the bike and everything, and she's like, "Can you adopt me?" She's like, I mean, what am I saying?"
No, I do. I like that. Hey, will you adopt me? What?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. There's no one badass, and there isn't necessarily a hierarchy. It just seems like they're different teams of spider people working together to put the multiverse back together, or to maintain the status quo in these things. So, because we saw the whole team of spider people jump in,
Mumbattan, right?
Mumbattan, to go down and to, I guess, resolve the Spot thing. Hopefully, I mean, that's what they seem to be doing. So,
And how cool to me, it's so, the journey that Miles and Spot take together is so great. I love that it starts with Miles like laughing at him doing his usual Spidey quips, and like, just basically like picking up his cell phone, interrupting the fight, doing what Spider-Man would do, and realizing his error. But I like how Spot becomes something very serious, and like his voice gets all distorted. The change from black spots on white to white spots on black is so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. You're right.
I mean, they elevate. I mean, Joe. I mean, because I this is the first time I've encountered this villain. I'm assuming the writers have taken this villain to a whole new level as compared to the comics, right?
Yes, yeah, he was. If I'm not mistaken, I think he might have been in the original Spider-Man cartoon back in the '90s. You know, was it about 1994? That Spider-Man
Yeah,
cartoon.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think he
I
was
don't
in
remember
it.
he was in it, but I do. That cartoon obviously
Yeah.
is a touch point, which I'm surprised we didn't see that Spider-Man show up at some point, considering
No, we didn't, did we? No.
we saw the Spider-Man from Spider-Man
I
Unlimited and the other Spider-Man too.
I don't
Um,
know. It's possible he didn't get like a moment, but I'm guessing he's in there somewhere because there's so many spider
Yeah.
people that like I'm guessing he's somewhere.
Yeah.
yeah, I would think like I mean I think they've given he's probably back. I would have to stop and watch it, or maybe again they were thinking in mind with the part two, so maybe there's other famous spider people in pop culture they're thinking of giving a little bit more time to in the sequel.
Possibly.
Um,
Yeah.
that they
We did get a few bars of the original Spider-Man theme, right? In this film, at one point, did we not? Yes, I thought. Yeah.
yeah, isn't that when the I think that's isn't that when the Ditko Spider-Man is swinging through and he's like I
Mhm.
can't
Yeah,
do
I
this.
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
It's still my favorite animated theme of all time.
Yeah, this movie is Chris, it is as amazing as you said it was. I am willing to wait, and we're going to have to wait anyway to see the
Mm-hmm.
sequel. So I'm curious. I'll be curious to see where they go with it. I like Chris. You seem very. I'm not saying no. I'm saying like that the alternate Miles that we meet, who's the Prowler, is a villain. I wonder if seeing the death of. I wonder if that'll turn Miguel around, because if the loss of his dad turns Miles into a villain, maybe that'll be the softening of that canon can be
Oh, I
broken.
hadn't even considered that possibility, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I haven't even considered that as a possibility, but like, yeah, if he sees it that it turns him into the Prowler, and what that could mean, he might realize, oh, it'll do more damage if I let this thing happen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I like that. I like that a lot, James. I think there are a lot of different ways it could go. I think part of why I trust them the way that I do is that like how great is it like the twists that they have I think are just so freaking impressive that Miles and like it all makes sense. It was set up from the first movie, but like when we learn how he created the spot and he couldn't understand it at first, but he absolutely created the spot. The guy he hit with a bagel, I'm like, it was the first couple of times I watched the movie I didn't notice, but I think it was like the fourth viewing that I said to Christina, oh look, when he throws the bagel he actually hits some guy with it. um, so to have that come into play is to me funny, but then also, of course, he wasn't supposed to be Spider-Man, right? Like we already had all the information we needed to know that he's not supposed to be Spider-Man. So that little twist was I thought great. The twist that it turns out Miles did know what he was doing and then trying to get home, and then the twist that like he didn't get home because of course he didn't get home. It was checking the DNA from the spider, not his DNA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so all of that stuff, and then of course the twist that like he's the Prowler in this universe that has no Spider-Man. Yeah, it all just really it blew my mind how clean it all came together, and so there are I think a lot of different directions in which they could go, and I'll be very curious to see what that looks like because I honestly have no idea how you resolve all of this in a single movie. I just don't know how you do it.
Well, maybe. Oh, well, I was going to say, Chris, watching some YouTube videos after this, they must have this plan or some idea since the first movie, because they pointed out someone like pulled a scene from the scene where Miles gets bitten, and the 42 spider in that scene glitches.
Oh.
So
Oh,
you
that's
know,
right. That's right. It does.
so you know it's from an alternate reality from the very first. I mean, they don't explain it until this movie, but they must have had some seeds that they were going to hopefully get the opportunity to continue the story. So they put that in there already. But yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I don't know how they're going to resolve all this. I mean, because the other thing is like, I mean, I don't see it resolving, at least in a way. Like, I don't know how you resolve that issue. Like we started this whole podcast about like if you know someone's going to die, how you let that happen, unless they somehow just decide not to regulate the multiverse. I don't know. That's like it's such a big topic. I don't know how you work. I mean, I trust them to find it, but I don't know how you find that, and
Right.
also do it in one movie.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
one
I mean,
movie that's 2.5 hours long.
well,
But
that's what it'll be, right? Because that's
yeah,
what this one was.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so I think, I think there's a lot of There are a lot of ways this can go. And it's possible that like they have set themselves up to fail. That's definitely a possibility, simply because there's so much at stake, that maybe they did set up too much. I don't think they have. I think they have a plan coming into this. I think that they've had at least some plan after the first movie. So I think there are probably a lot of good ideas out there, and I'm not too worried about how it ends. I'm very curious as to how it ends, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm curious how it ends too. But I mean, I think it's like I'm not saying we're doing this here, but I think we've kind of run into this situation with pop culture movies of all types where the next one in the line of a sequel or the next one in the line of a series has to be, I wouldn't say better than the previous one. Like it's sort of like Endgame and Infinity War. I'm trying to find a really example, but let's say Endgame and Infinity War are amazing movies, but so is Avengers. But they're amazing on different levels. So like if the next like part of this is like Avengers level and maybe not Endgame level, I don't know if my analogy is making sense, but
Yeah.
if it's still just a good movie, but necessarily better than this movie, I don't know if I'm fully disappointed. Because it's still good storytelling. It just, I don't know. I don't know if I'm making any sense to you too, but,
No,
uh,
I think I follow.
like I just want it to be a good movie. I will love it if it's as good or better than this movie, but I just want the storytelling to make sense. Like, I guess what I'm saying is I want the storytelling to make sense
Yeah,
and to resolve in a way in which is in line with the writing they've shown us so far and not convenient writing because
right.
I don't like to use the word lazy writing as we've all discussed that.
We've
I
discussed
don't
it
think
before.
whatever they're putting out to us is not going to be lazy, but maybe this is when you see a resolution, sometimes you've already pulled out all the tricks and now it's time to put like the tricks, like see where all those tricks like land in the end.
Yeah, and you can do this in a couple of ways. Sequels. They always Hollywood. Make it bigger and better than the last one. We were talking about that off line before, James, with the Barbie movie, right? Are they just going to go ahead and just make more movies about Mattel toys and not learn from the what the movie was really about? So I think there's going to be, I would hope anyway, there's going to be scenes in the next one of redemption. Obviously, Miguel O'Hara needs to be redeemed, and so does Prowler Spider-Man, Prowler Miles in his universe. So you can resolve these gigantic multiversal problems by actually resolving personal problems and human problems, and maybe that's what like you said before. Maybe they realize at some point we don't need to control the quote unquote multiverse anymore. Just let humanity be humanity. And when I think of Spider-Man, I put him in the same category with Superman, in that they will go to any lengths to save just one person. And I think Miles is going to save Prowler Miles. He's going to turn him. Yeah,
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's going to try,
yeah. He's
but
definitely going to try because that's who he is, and I
right,
would hope he succeeds.
you know.
That's what I want to see. One of the things I want to see in the next film.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like because we're all thinking in hypothetical. Now we're in the hypotheticals portion
Yeah.
of the podcast, where
Well,
like
it's okay.
we can throw anything out. Like I don't know, like do I like the idea that he would redeem his evil self? Do I like more the idea that his evil self is his evil self? I don't know. It's also sort of like, do we want Miguel to be redeemed? I mean, I guess the way the story's going is that Miguel has to find some type of redemption or peace with what he's done. Um,
Hmm.
And
yeah,
that's just I don't know. You're right. We are thinking in hypotheticals. I like that there are, instead of one villain, there are multiple villains,
Hmm.
or at least obstacles, right? And I think that's really good because it allows us to explore some really interesting space, because maybe there is one redemption arc, maybe there are two, maybe there are zero. And I could be here for literally all of that, because I was talking to a friend who, she was saying, I'm kind of tired of villains who aren't villains. Like, I'm kind of tired of some of that, not because it's not a valid way to tell a story, but because I feel like it gets overused. And I'm like, I can absolutely appreciate that. I can
I
totally
agree.
appreciate that it gets overused, and that maybe we're tired of that. Maybe we just straight up want someone who, when trying to convince him that what he's doing is wrong and he shouldn't do it, he's like, screw you, I don't care. There's something to be said, I think, about the conviction that Miles is showing as a hero. He's also going to show as a villain.
Yes, yeah, that's a very good point, Chris. Yes.
You know, he wants so badly to fit in with the Spider Society, but he's not willing, despite how badly he wants to be with his friends, and all of his friends are doing this intervention. Um, Despite how badly he wants to do that, he is not willing to sacrifice his father, not even at the risk of an entire universe, because he's decided already, I'm going to do both. This is what Spider-Man does. He does both, right? So I have to wonder if Prowler Miles shares those same convictions of, I don't care what you tell me. Like, I know myself. I know my priorities. This is a thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
Good, very
Which
good
is,
point, Chris.
you know, that was my point also, what you were saying, Chris, like when we brought it up, like the High Evolutionary is a bad guy
Right.
and he does bad things. And it's refreshing because, like, to your point, to your conversation with your friend, like it is a little bit of a trope these days, like I think, to make the villain always sympathetic with the audience. I mean, in the real world, there are people who are doing bad things and they're not sympathetic. Like,
right.
you know, so, and not every villain, just because they're cool or because the audience likes them, needs to have this window to turn them into a hero.
Right.
I mean,
right. Absolutely agree with that. We don't always need that. And so I'll be curious to see what happens. I think one of the other things that's really interesting that might maybe give us some idea of redemption versus doubling down might be the score, because the score and the soundtrack to me are absolutely bonkers. Um, the fact that everybody sort of has their different theme, what those themes sound like Miguel's theme versus Gwen's theme versus Miles' theme, which then gets corrupted when it's Prowler Miles. Like, if you go back and you listen, it's Miles' theme but with a twist. It's all so well done. All the music really helps tell the story. I think, much like, Joe, you said you could turn off all the sound and watch the movie, and and because of the animation and the visual storytelling and the cinematography, you can still follow the story. I think there's something about that to the score as well.
yeah, I agree. I'm glad you brought that up, Chris, because I not thought to mention the music, and the music is a huge part of this as well. I think it's integrated so well, and it's such an experience that you may not like always catch the musical changes and stuff, or what they're doing musically, because it all works together with what's on screen. But you're absolutely right about the music, and it's a huge part of this movie, and is sort of like the second, like, I wouldn't say a secondary. It's just a component that makes everything work together, and it does give you cues about what's happening with the characters that you're seeing on screen.
Yes, definitely. I mean, when I think of musical cues, I think of the original Star Trek series. You could be out of the room and you knew what was going on by just the music in that particular scene. Oh, Kirk's fighting the Gorn, or Kirk is seducing another alien woman. You know by the music what was going on. Visual storytelling, oral storytelling. Yeah, it's all great movies have great scores. This is
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just part of the journey, and again, I'm so blown away by how it manages to hit every single, for me, every single mark. It's a complete film, and it's not like, sometimes you go, yeah, that was good for an animated flick, and I think in a lot of ways we've moved away from that. Animation is so advanced and it's so commonplace, and there's so many different types of it that I don't feel like I hear that qualifier as frequently as I used to. But by the same token, like, this movie requires, I think, so much more attention than quote just an animated flick.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, to its credit, though, it is the longest American-made animated movie.
I was just going to ask that question. It is? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. It's the longest animated movie, so it has that going for it. But I would say, like, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, but it didn't feel like that,
No,
at least to
not
me.
at all.
I mean, I didn't feel there was any slow parts.
No, when I was watching it yesterday, I forgot that Chris had told us that it was continued, and so I stopped it for a second. Probably to go to the bathroom or something, and I came back and I saw the timestamp on the bottom. I said, wait a minute, how are they going to resolve this with only 8 minutes left?
Right.
And I still didn't remember it was continued. So I was happy that it was, because if they, back in the day, they would have resolved it for the TV show. Of course, they would have resolved it in 8 minutes, and it would have been contrived. But no, this is fine. I don't, it's, I haven't felt this way about a continued film since The Empire Strikes Back. I
Wow.
wasn't, and as you
Nice.
know, that is my favorite. And then why? How could Joe? How could that be your favorite sci-fi film? But it is. But when I walked out of the theater in 1980, I was fulfilled. This is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen, and I can wait 3 years to see what happens
Yep.
with
Yep.
Luke
That's
Leia.
exactly how I feel.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, this gave me that feeling. Yes, it did.
Well, listening audience, if we haven't, if you're listening to this, you have hopefully watched it
Yes.
because we've
Well, you
spoiled
spoiled the hell
everything.
out of it.
Right.
We spoiled everything, I think, or most things at least. But if for some reason you decide to listen to this and not watch it, I hope you go back and watch it and and enjoy it. And maybe our commentary has given you some things to look for, and you'll see deeper meanings in these things when you watch it if you've listened to this first. But if not, it's also worth a second viewing. At some point, I'm going to rewatch this as well when it becomes available on whatever service it becomes available on.
Is a DVD available yet?
I don't know. I didn't think to look into it.
I think it is. I think it is. I think I saw
have to
it.
get it. That's I'm just,
Yeah, I think I saw it at Walmart. They got like the 5K or HD.
Okay,
I think it's out there. So yeah, so
I will be purchasing one.
yeah, so audience, if you haven't, go watch it. If you have, go watch it again. That'll be our recommendations, I think, for this episode.
Yeah, seriously.
And we will all anxiously be waiting for news on when the next one will be coming, which I'm kind of in line with Chris. I don't see next year as being their goalpost. So
no, I can't imagine.
No.
Maybe closer to Joe's with the 3 years in between Star Wars movies. Maybe that's a closer goalpost to aim for. So, but thank you for listening to this episode. If you have seen this movie and you have your own thoughts or things that we missed or things that we touched upon, you have different thoughts about it, we'd like to hear your comments in the Facebook group with this post, so please put them there. But otherwise, I could not do this deep dive into the Spider-Verse without my two other hosts. So thank you, Joe.
Well, you're welcome, James. This is a great trip into the friendly neighborhood.
Yes, and Chris, thank you for hyping this movie and getting us to watch it so quickly that we could do this episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, like Joe said, it was great. I'm glad we did it. I love it. So I'm really grateful you guys were like, let's get moving on this. That was great.
Yeah, audience, I would just like let you know we recorded this episode. We had another thing in mind, and then I started watching this movie, and I'm like, no, we're gonna. I wasn't even done with the movie when I messaged you, Chris. I was like, we're gonna do this.
I didn't know that.
And I was like an hour and 20 minutes into it. I'm like, I'm gonna get Joe, and if he's available, we're gonna scrap the other thing and just go right into this. So
yep. Love it.
So, but audience, we'll do that other topic at some point, and we're never going to tell you about it. But just to know how immediately I changed my mind and tone, and Chris was all on board. He was all on board. So.
Oh yeah, no, it wasn't a difficult sell for me. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, and Joe was all on board too. He was.
Yeah.
Took a break from his sports watching, which is now 24/7, 365 days a year because of hockey. Thanks to Chris. So audience, that should be enough also to say you should go out and watch this. But thank you for listening, and we will talk to you on the next episode.